Hi everyone, and welcome to video number 20 on Henry VIII and his ministers. And this video, ladies and gentlemen, is all about Henry's fourth wife, called Anne of Cleves. Let's go back to history. 5th of January 1540. I'm getting married in the morning. Ding dong, the bells are gonna chime. Well, that's what Henry VIII would have sung, because the very next day, the 6th of June 1540, he was married to his fourth wife, Anne of Cleves. Now, what's this all about? Who is she? If you remember, after the end of his first marriage to Catherine of Aragon, Henry married very quickly Anne Boleyn. After the end of the second marriage to Anne Boleyn, he married very quickly the third wife, Jane of Seymour. But it was over 2 years since the death of Jane Seymour, and Henry had not remarried. Of course, he had his son, Edward, so the need wasn't as great. But by 1539, 1540, something had changed his mind, and Henry gets married again. Well, this video is going to explain the story of what had happened, why Henry decided to get married again, and why Anne of Cleves was the chosen fourth wife. So let's have a little look. The reasons that Henry felt he had to marry again. They were mainly political, nothing at all to do with love. No. England was isolated from 1537, 1538, 1539. June 1538. Francis and Charles, Francis King of France, Emperor Charles V, they signed a 10-year truce. December 1538, the Pope issued what was known as a papal bull, excommunicating Henry, in effect kicking him out of the Catholic Church, which meant, according to Catholic law, Henry could be overthrown as the king. Things get worse. January 1539, Francis and Charles sign another agreement saying, look, neither of us will make friends with England without the other's consent. So it seems as if England is up here, isolated, and its enemies, France and the Emperor, the Holy Roman Empire, Germany, are getting together against England. England being isolated, what could they do? Well, by 1539 there was a very strong fear of invasion. England had its spies over in Europe, places like Antwerp and Amsterdam, and they are looking at the possible build-up of soldiers, ships, weapons, supplies. It looks as if England is about to be invaded. The spies over there, way, they're playing a game of I Spy. I spy with my little eye something beginning with T. T for trouble. Trouble for England. Parts of England were actually in panic. Down in the south, the southeast, England was getting ready to try and resist the invasion. Troops, defences, weapons, even a visit by King Henry VIII himself down in the southeast. That was England's military response to the threat of invasion. But at the same time, there could be a different response, a more political response. Henry could get married. And the job, the responsibility, of course, let's go back to our old points here. Look at one of Cromwell's jobs. There it is, quite clearly. Arrange Henry's marriages. So just as Cromwell had been involved in getting the marriage annulled for Catherine of Aragon, just as he'd been involved in sorting out the replacement by execution of Anne Boleyn by Jane Seymour, he now has the responsibility to sort the fourth marriage. Cromwell looks around and he spots this woman, Anne of Cleves. Why did he choose her? What possible reasons did he have? Well, let's have a look. Anne herself, apparently a very obedient, polite, gentle person. If you remember, Henry had got upset with Anne Boleyn because she was quite pushy and pushed her ideas forward. Henry did not like that. So if Anne is going to be quieter, a bit like Jane Seymour was, maybe that would be attractive to Henry. This is what Cromwell is thinking. Her father, Anne of Cleves' father, the Duke of Cleves, he was also happy for the marriage to King Henry. Not many people were. Why not? Why wouldn't you want your daughter to marry the King of England? Well, look at what's happened to his first 3 wives. One was kicked out, Catherine of Aragon. One was executed, Anne Boleyn, and one died tragically giving birth. So maybe marrying King Henry wasn't that good after all. But the Duke of Cleves, he was happy for the marriage to go ahead. Cleves, it's a small part of Germany. Cleves had also broken away from the Pope, as had King Henry. So if Cleves allies with Henry and England, it's mutually beneficial. They are supporting each other against their enemies. So Henry here may have an ally against Catholic invasions. Of course, Henry is pleased that he's got his son, Edward, but it's still only one son. We've seen that many people in Tudor England in the 1500s, many people died very young. So for Henry to be absolutely safe and secure that the Tudors were going to carry on the dynasty, he needed more sons. So just as Henry needs more sons, England needed more allies. Cromwell, he's organising it all. He's thinking, if I organise the marriage, Henry will be pleased, I will get big ticks, it gives me more authority, more power to introduce more Protestant religious reforms. Also, if the new queen is from Cleves, which is foreign, she won't be allied to any old English noble families that might unite against me, Cromwell. So for Cromwell, it was a good deal. So throughout 1538 into 1539, it looks as if Henry is moving towards another marriage. March 1539, Henry allowed Cromwell to start marriage negotiations. 6 months. October 1539, Henry signed the treaty agreeing to the wedding. The 4th wedding is on. Now, Henry had seen a painting or a portrait of Anne of Cleves by a very famous artist, world-renowned artist at the time, a man called Hans Holbein. England. Henry saw the portrait and he liked what he saw. He says, good, Anne of Cleves looks a very attractive lady. I'm happy to marry her. 1971, ladies and gentlemen, Rod Stewart, very famous singer, and he had a song, Every Picture Tells a Story. Well, this one certainly did. So, let's see if we can summarise what the painting, what the picture was all about. Here's a silly little poem by me. A painting that really deceives. A beauty, so Henry believes. My next wife will be Anne of Cleves. But disaster, said Henry, who leaves. What's this all about? December 1539, Anne of Cleves arrived in England. Oh, Henry had only seen the painting, and now he sees the reality. There seems to be a bit of a difference in Henry's eyes here. He apparently shouted at Cromwell, I like her not! I like her not! Now in history, Anne has always been suggested that she was, quite plain, maybe a little bit ugly. Unfairly and cruelly nicknamed the Flanders mare. Apparently that's not really true. Apparently it's not fair. She was quite a normal, respectable lady. But Henry, once he'd made up his mind, he was difficult. He was a headstrong man. He had his own view. Henry wanted to stop the wedding. That puts Cromwell in a tricky position, because remember, Cromwell's done all the negotiations, and really it's a political marriage to stop the isolation of England. So Cromwell has to persuade Henry to still get married because of this threat of invasion. Go back to the start of the video. I'm getting married in the morning. Ding dong, the bells are gonna chime. Well, most bridegrooms are looking forward to it. It didn't seem as if Henry was. It's as if he's been forced into the marriage, ladies and gentlemen, because of political reasons. Francis and Charles have another meeting in Paris. It looks as if they're getting even closer against England. So, the 6th of January 1540, Henry's fourth marriage did take place. Henry did marry Anne of Cleves. But on the wedding night, they didn't even sleep together. This seems to be not a very good sign. Cromwell, remember, is very closely associated with this marriage. He needs it to go well, ladies and gentlemen. But it didn't. Things quickly unravelled. According to Henry, one of the reasons was how Anne looked, not what he had expected from the painting. Also, some people had suggested that Anne didn't fit in. She wasn't sophisticated enough for Henry's court. She was more interested in needlework, not the singing and dancing that would be needed in a court like Henry's. Also, Henry's roving eye had spotted another young lady, a lady in waiting, a lady called Catherine Howard. And maybe the main point of why the marriage all went wrong. Francis and Charles, who'd been getting closer and closer together against England, they had fallen out again, which meant that the threat of invasion was now receding. Maybe this was the key reason. It's good news for Henry. He told Cromwell very, very quickly, arrange for the annulment of my marriage. Now, legally, that would be easy to do, because the marriage had never been consummated. They had never slept together. So they married in January 1540. By July 1540, the marriage was over. Anne of Cleves continued to live in England, and she became known as the King's sister. Henry was very pleased. His roving eye, remember, had spotted Catherine Howard. And he thought, great, I can marry her now. So Henry's pleased. But what about for Cromwell? He'd put a lot of effort into the fourth marriage to Anne of Cleves. He was very, very closely associated with the fourth marriage. Well, what would the future look like for Cromwell? What do you think? In the next video, we'll have a look and find out. As ever, I hope it's been useful. See you soon.